And I'm Maxine Birmingham, and I'll be hosting you for the day. So today it's all about the digital health startup, those amazing, brave pioneers who are really unhappy with the status quo and do something about it by quitting their day job. So we're here to support them and we're here to accelerate them and help them grow. So just tell you a little bit about the agenda today. We have to kick off, Dr. James Summeroo will be moderating a panel. Now, James, I believe, has played almost every single role in the healthcare startup ecosystem. And he's moderating a panel on scaling health tech across markets. And in case he's too shy to plug it himself, do catch his health tech podcast and his new newsletter at healthtechpigeon.com. The podcast is available on all the usual platforms. So next we'll have Dr. Jack Severs to provide some vital information on maximizing intellectual property and the value of your business. And then after a break, Jan Berger of GE Healthcare will be introducing us to the 6 startups in the Edison Accelerator run by Wyra. Their demos are also available for a deeper dive in the exhibition area. Then we're going to have the guys from Imperial X, a small program for med students to help them understand innovation and entrepreneurship. They're going to pop in just before lunch. After lunch, John Williams of Granted will help you to get your hands on non-dilutive funding. And then lastly, we have the big highlight of the afternoon, always a big show, the Beanstalk pitching event. We've got 11 pitches then, so make sure you're back after lunch because it's usually standing room only. So now, without any ado, I'm going to introduce James for the Scaling Health Tech panel. And we have Michael Kamet of Kamet Ventures, Andru Elder of Albion, and serial entrepreneur Rajan Singh. Over to you.
Coming up, guys. Yeah, coming up. Cool. Thank you, Maxine. I'm not at all too shy to plug myself. So here we go. Settle in for this long intro. I'm joking, of course. But I am James. I am an anaesthetics intensive care doctor by background. Practiced clinically for 5 years. I've done loads of stuff in the health tech space. I've run a couple of health tech accelerators. I host the health tech podcast. There's the newsletter Health Tech Pigeon. And I'm the founder of SOMX, which is a health tech specific communications agency. So we do press and PR multimedia content for health tech startups specifically. So hello to all of our online viewers. The idea for today is we're going to talk about scaling health tech across markets. And I have a really esteemed panel with me today. We've got, everybody I think has got an investment background. Ranjit, also an entrepreneur currently. I think Michael as well previously. But I'm going to give these guys the chance to introduce themselves first. So we've got an hour. We've got quite a long panel. So take your time, guys, on these intros. But it'd be great to hear a bit about yourselves, a bit about your backgrounds, and a bit about what you're doing currently in your companies and firms. So Ranjit, over to you first.
Thanks, James. I'm Ranjit Singh. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Health Hero. Health Hero is the leading European digital telehealth platform. We're in 4 countries, UK, Ireland, Germany, and France. We cover 30 million lives and do 3 million patient consultations, thousands of doctors in our network doing that. The way Health Hero approaches things is basically, we think to build a scalable digital health platform across Europe, you need to tackle the core issues facing patients on one hand, which is experience and outcome of the issues there. And for the system, everything else put together, I'm calling system, it's efficiency, cost, capacity, and process efficiency. So the way we deliver healthcare is marrying the two, experience for the patient and efficiency for the system. So that's what we do as Health Hero. My own background, I've been building, scaling, and investing, as you said, James, in digital businesses for the last 22, 25 years. I've done it as an executive. I've done it as entrepreneur a few times and also as an investor. And the industries I've done it in, the previous ones are in travel, retail, and a bit in banking, and last 7 years in healthcare. No commonality at the face of it, but there is an underlying connecting theme that all of these are massive sectors fundamentally transformed by digital. And that's what I see in healthcare today. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael.
Hello. So hello, I am Michael Nidam. I am a co-founder at Kamet Venture. I've been spending my career being an entrepreneur and an intrapreneur, a consultant, and focusing on insurance and health for my whole life. Within Kamet Venture, what I've been doing in the past 6 years is building from scratch a set of ventures, 24 in total, across those two industries that I have a passion for, insurance and healthcare. The reason why I've been doing that is because I strongly believe that there is an underlying transformation that's happening at the core of those industries, and specifically on health, a massive one, powered by digital, powered by data, and made necessary because of the change in the demographics, in the cost of human resources, and in the way healthcare system operates. At Kamet, we put, I believe, over 10 health ventures on the market. One of them, by the way, was acquired by Health Hero. It's a leading telemedicine business in France. We really address, I would say, a broad set of opportunities across health in the diagnostic space, in the access space, in the patient management space, but I would call them all clinical startups rather than R&D startups. And so personally, if you ask me, I don't really consider myself an investor. I never really invested except as a casual investor, when I go to Las Vegas. But apart from that, I am much more an entrepreneur. I always dedicated myself to launching business, to putting together new ideas, to bringing team together. And that's what Kamet has done in the past 6 years and hopefully will continue to do.
Return on the investment from the Vegas investments as well.
It's very low.
It's very low indeed. Yeah. Indeed. Andrew, over to yourself.
Thank you, James. So I'm Andrew Elder. I am a healthcare partner at Albion Ventures. I trained as a neurosurgeon and then spent some years working for BCG in commercial healthcare. I think like Michael here, maybe not quite as many years at BCG, but that was a good training, but always had a view on doing VC and being involved in VC. So I'm not a founder, I'm not an entrepreneur, but I've been in VC for the last 16 years, having been in the clinical system for 12 years before that. So healthcare through and through, I think, like the rest of the panel. And I've spent a lot of time thinking hard about how technology can improve healthcare. I left healthcare with a view to having more impact than I could have done with a piece of steel in my hand. And technology is a way of doing that. It's a way of increasing scalability, access, efficiency of delivery, and ultimately also improving outcomes. And that's, as medics or people involved in the healthcare system, that's what we're all really focused on, I think, ultimately is improving those patient outcomes. Albion is, we manage about 800 million of venture funds. Most of that is in investing in seed to B, but with a sweet spot around Series A, sort of 5 to 15 million pounds. And we invest mainly in software companies. And in health tech, that's really digital care and digital pharma are the two areas we sort of think about. Digital pharma being, use of software and technology to improve the efficiency of R&D and trials, bringing medicines to market, and digital care all around improving access, efficiency of delivery, and better outcomes in the care delivery pathway. And as I'm sure we'll go into, we think hard about not just how technology can impact that, but actually how you blend technology with people, because fundamentally people are at the heart of care pathways, and you're never going to pull them out completely. So getting that balance right and building companies fit for purpose to deliver both people, services, high quality care, and using technology and building technology are quite a set of integrated skills. So I think we'll be talking about that later.
Over the course of the next hour. So starting with Michael and Ranjit, you guys have both built businesses in various sectors, insurance, retail, travel. You certainly have a deep level of experience and expertise in those sectors. What makes scaling a health tech company so different? Why is healthcare such a different beast? What are the unique challenges about healthcare?
I can go first, yeah. I mean, there are two obvious answers, or one more obvious than the other. The most obvious one is healthcare is structured, delivered, and regulated very differently in different markets. And it's like running a completely different company almost, right? So you can't build one thing, one platform, and have one business model and just a steamroll across markets. So that you just can't do. So that's number one. Number two is more intangible. I mean, most digital entrepreneurs, they're used to moving at pace and, move fast, fail fast, break things and all that has become kind of a mantra in the digital ecosystem. And that is a paradigm shift that just doesn't work in health tech, healthcare at all, right? So those are the two things that come to mind. I mean, it's a different way of thinking, different way of approaching it, and more tangibly, just different way of structuring and delivering your business or healthcare.
Your evidence though of somebody who is the same entrepreneur that has been successful across those different industries. My question was going to be, do you think it can be the same person that can build in move fast, break things to a healthcare where they have to slow down and do things differently? But your evidence that is possible.
I know that I'm very special.
Aren't we all?
Just kidding. Look, as I said, as long as you bring the nuanced approach that is needed to healthcare, and I've learned it the hard way as well over the next last 7 years, and we'll be learning it over the next 7 as well. So the short answer is yes, as long as you cater to, from my perspective, those two things that I mentioned. I mean, one thing I learned is you cannot wish regulation away.
Yeah.
No matter how tempting it seems in healthcare. I mean, you've got to learn to live with it, adapt, and act accordingly. And that was my learning.
Yeah, you have to go through it, not around it, I suppose. Michael, what's your experience?
So now that the obvious answers are on the table, I'm a bit stuck in the corner.
You can just wholeheartedly
Glad
agree.
I went first, right?
Thank you. No, so I think there are two questions in your question. There is one about what makes healthcare difficult to scale locally and also geographically. Okay, so I think locally the first thing is that people like Ranjan that are I would say courageous enough to jump into this industry and cautious enough not to make those mistakes of going too fast. There are not that many. Okay. And so a lot of entrepreneurs are going there thinking they will apply the same recipe that has been applied to retail, and they fail. And the fact that they fail creates a lot of anxiety on the investor side and makes it much more difficult to find the initial money. Okay. The healthcare route to market is a very different one than the, I would say, retail route to market. I'm using retail, but I think it's more general than that. Even SaaS route to market is very different than healthcare. In many of the innovation, there is a long period of time in which you need to invest to have a product that can be distributed. And you still don't know at this point in time whether the distribution will be successful. Very often, you don't really know what are the alternative technologies that are being developed in parallel and what are the merit of yours versus the others. If I take a simple example on something we're looking at right now, there are tons of, for example, liquid biopsies going on the market. You see the Thrive, the great solution, you know, a lot of hope for everybody in fighting cancer and detecting early. At the same time, you have tons of solutions that are being investigated within university labs by startups on pan-cancer testing, okay, which is looking at more generic markers of all cancers together. Now, on those, you probably, I could identify, doing my homework, probably 4 or 5 different stream of technologies trying to achieve the same stuff. It's impossible for a health entrepreneur to do all the 4. For an investor, maybe it is, but for an entrepreneur, it's absolutely impossible. In order to know whether any of those will have merits, you need to go through the initial phase of discovery, get your own feeling that it's going to work, do some R&D so that you can have a stable test that works, and then go through a clinical test that will take, in the best case, if you have the best connections, 1 year, 1.5 years, okay? And only at the end of that can you really test the distribution on the market. And we don't even know when you start if you're going to be the first out of the tunnel. So you see, the nature of the risk is very, very different than the nature of the risk when you say, I'm going to launch a new hail riding platform. It will take me 6 weeks to put an app together and test it with customers. You see, so even if you can do a lot of pre-testing, understanding of the market sizing, discussion, the proof being in the pudding is a very long time in the oven. Okay, so it means that even for an entrepreneur, going alone is a much bigger risk. The bootstrapping is much more difficult to do. The number of solutions that are matured is much less. And so if we don't find new ways of supporting those entrepreneurs, I think it's going to be very, very difficult to deliver innovation at the same pace as it has been delivered in other industries.
So Andrew, you as a neurosurgeon understand healthcare deeply, and you must have come across this at Albion, you know, as investing in software as you do, entrepreneurs that have come to you, second, third time founders, they may have built a business in retail, they may have built a business in travel. What are you going to tell them about the unique challenges in healthcare? And I guess, what are the unique challenges that you're seeing in your portfolio now with those, you know, at least 2 different areas that you're in, you know, the pharma and the more healthcare medical?
I think it's great to have additional skills and experiences coming in outside of healthcare into healthcare, and so the tech entrepreneurs and so on. I think it's wonderful to have that sort of those experiences of fast moving, iterating cycles and stuff. But I think what we've heard already is that needs to be highly tempered, and it needs to be sort of focused within a framework of this is different, and helping set expectations and point towards the differences. But I think some of that passion, that desire to iterate and to build high quality software companies, we have to get hold of, because let's face it, in healthcare, the last 20 years, there's not been great high quality software companies built. Whereas outside of healthcare, there's been this fantastic learning about how to build a stack, how to build a team, how to iterate fast, how to have great consumer experiences.
It's sort of harnessing that impatience, isn't it? It's that impatient founder that wants to change something.
Yeah,
I think there is something to say, you're right, about bringing that person into healthcare and going, yeah, exercise your impatience here, because we could use some of that energy.
Yes, but temper it. And I think that one of the things that it brings is that utter consumer focus. It's now an utter patient focus, and the world is moving to a more patient-centric sort of approach. Can you hear me still?
I'm sure they can online, yeah.
and that sort of the user interface side of things is one sort of simple example of that. Healthcare is just, if you looked at any healthcare software in the last 15, 20 years, there wasn't an element of patient or user experience involved in it. And now we wouldn't look at anything unless it had user and patient experience all over it. And that's been quite a rapid change. It's only because we're now getting people from that technology world into the world that we're able to do that. Is really important to bring from the healthcare side, and that takes a lot of experience, a lot of understanding market by market.
Yeah.
But healthcare can learn a huge amount from tech, and it's bringing those tech people in, bringing the tech investors in, the tech entrepreneurs, the serial entrepreneurs, bringing them onto the board, understanding how to create a tech culture. And then it's marrying the two, because the two don't always sit side by side beautifully. So bringing those two things together is again, another interesting challenge that we now face for the next 10, 15 years that we haven't faced in the last 10 or 15.
Awesome.
Can I add to that? When I entered healthcare, I mean, every sector that we worked in, every single industry player says that their industry, their business is very complex. Okay, be it travel, be it retail, be it whatever. You might be running the simplest business, but it's almost become fashionable to say that what they're doing is very complex. So when I entered healthcare, I approached it with a healthy deal of a skepticism, right? Because everyone I spoke to said it's complex. 7 years down, I have to say that it is complex, right? So it is. I think that realization just needs to be internalized, right? And just like regulation and other bits of things, you just need to prepare for it. That's one. Two, what I learned is, saying you're in healthcare is a bit like saying you're in internet, right? It's so vast that, the subsector that you choose, what you choose to do is super important, right? And the way it is evolving is an ecosystem partnership-led approach, which Michael touched upon, is the way to go about it and build.
Very different. The market is totally different. I mean, the structure of the payer and the incentives are different in every market. You say that the UK is a single payer. It's not exactly true.
Well, not exactly true, no.
It's not exactly true. You have different kind of payers for different kind of operations. If I take, for example, fertility, who's the single payer?
Yeah.
It's the couple. Okay, so it's out of pocket. If I take physiotherapy, it's probably 30-70.
Yeah.
And then people have some private insurance. It's not a huge number of people that do have them, but still it exists, and it's quite a big market, the private insurance. But it doesn't, it's very responsible for detecting the disease, but not really responsible for treating it. So if you say I can enhance, for example, prevention, in the UK, who really has an incentive? Okay, you can say NHS on the whole, etc., but it's still a very big, complex organization to navigate. And if you go to the private world, nobody, because actually, yes, you want to do a good job, but you're not exposed to the consequences of detecting earlier at all. If you go to Germany, it's very different. You have a small private market that goes all the way from acute diagnostic to chronic disease treatment and management, and so that have more incentive, but they are very, very tiny, and a public offer that's completely fragmented. If you go to the US, the companies are actually the right payer. So actually, how do you really address this market? Cannot be the same in terms of the money flow, and because it's not the same in terms of the money flow, because it's not. I forgot to mention something. Some markets are capitated. So you say, if I am treating 2,000 patients, this is the money I'm going to make. Your only objective as at least an economic agent in this market is to grow your patient base. In other markets, it's a pay-per-fee. So your only incentive is to make people come more often. Some markets are right in the middle, like the German one. So you want them to come the right number of time, but no more. You see, the incentive is structured in a way as if agents of this market were not subject to those incentives, but were really focusing on their Hippocrates segment. Yeah. Believe me, it's not the case. Okay, and when you look at the frequency of consultation in the different markets, they are clearly influenced by the incentive. And so for a solution to penetrate, to work in a market, if you don't completely take that into consideration, you cannot succeed, which means that some great clinical solution cannot succeed in some markets, for sure. And yeah, so it's very, very different.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and we'll build on it as well. It's clearly the markets, the reimbursements, the payers, it's different. It's also different by therapy area, as Michael said, and demographic as well. And when you start to put 5-6 different variables into play in each different market, you have this very complex matrix. So when you're taking a product to market, it's what makes healthcare so interesting, is that it is so complex from a go-to-market perspective. So we have B2B SaaS, most of our investments are actually B2B SaaS, non-healthcare, enterprise stuff, and they think a lot about product market fit and scaling, and understanding the point of product market fit and scaling is absolutely critical in terms of building a company fast and making a good investment return on it. In healthcare, that product market fit is so much harder to judge than in an enterprise solution in a non-healthcare environment. And the reason is that your product in every single market is a different product, and your market is different in every market. And a market is not just an aggregation of customers. It's a group of customers who have the same buying criteria and methods and mechanisms and so on. And so if you've got a customer who's got a slightly different buying criterion, for example, a patient doesn't really give a monkeys about a particular piece of technology because they don't understand what it's telling them, well, then the real purchasing power lies with the physician who's interpreting that data. If you choose a therapy area where it really has an impact, say you're going direct to consumer and it's sleep, well, a patient knows if they're sleeping well. You don't need a physician necessarily to interpret that. So you may be able to have a self-pay model. So you've got completely different sort of examples of way that purchasing criteria, the purchasing behavior works. And where there's different purchasing behavior, you have different product market fit by definition. And where you have different product market fit, you have different scaling dynamics by definition. So it's a real complexity. It's what makes it fun.
Yeah.
There's no simple answer. We could be here for hours and hours talking about it.
Well, Ranjan's going to tell us how fun it was. I want to build on this. So, Ranjan, let's talk about this. How early did you think about your international business models? I mean, how did you solve for that problem of scale and adoption? And how early did you think about that? Because with Health Hero, you are scaling internationally, and clearly there were going to be these problems ahead of you. Was it part of the idea? Was it part of the business plan originally, or was it something that you built the product for? It'll be fine, I'll solve it later. I mean, I'm interested in that journey for you.
Amazing question. Look, what we set out to build, I knew that requires a huge amount of investment, and to get the return on that investment, what you need is scale. Okay, and for scale in Europe, you need to be in multiple markets, right?
Yeah.
So that was a strategy right from inception, that we would be pan-European, right? And we knew enough to know that, as I said, every market is different, so we need to do things very, very differently. So we did two things to start with, right? The organizational capability and the tech infrastructure was built in mind, built with European expansion in mind, right? So it's very easy when you are doing things, let's say in UK, to be completely joined at the hips with NHS, and anything and everything you build cannot be transferable outside, right? As a technology. So that is, without going into detail, conceptually, that's what we did, right? But what we did not and could not do is right at the outset say what will be exactly the model in France and how would we do business in Germany, and that would just not have been possible. So what we did build, the other thing into our go-to-market approach or execution approach, is strategic M&A. So the way we think about it is we get the local best-in-breed players who've built their business for the local market. It is in their blood, it's in their DNA, the business model, they live and breathe that market, right? So we take that, best-in-breed local player, and Care being a shining example of that, the leading virtual clinic in France, and we bring the power of platform onto that, okay? And by the power of platform, there are a variety of things. There are those, tech platform. There are those clinical tools like, the medical grade best-in-breed symptom checker, health risk assessment, and myriad of other things, some intangible, the clinical pathways and service delivery models and so on and so forth, and management input, right? So that's how we've gone about it. And that's why we've been able to scale that rapidly, maintaining the local market knowledge and expertise. And if you talk to our French business, the German business, it's as if they don't do anything else but deliver healthcare in those markets. But at the same time, we have this, we call it 70-30. 30% is local and 70% is that part of the central platform. So that's the way we've gone about it. And then to me, that is the only plausible or financially sustainable way of doing it. We've seen various examples, and I don't need to take names here, who've raised far more money than us, but it's still, after a number of years, a 90% one market, 90% one channel or one segment, right? So that's the proof itself.
Really interesting, and you're right. I know companies the same. It's strategic, local M&A to adopt that knowledge and bring it in. You can end up in a dark place, I suppose, trying to hire for that and trying to get boots on the ground and do it slowly and, build all that IP in-house. Is this something that you guys are seeing across HealthTech? Is this M&A likely to be what starts to consolidate the markets?
Actually, I'd love to ask Ranjan a bit more about.
Please do. Yeah, go ahead.
His M&A and whether to buy or build, essentially. And I'll come back to that, because I think the advent of M&A is now starting to come in because we have this tech layer within it. It ends up being a scalable platform you can then take to any country, because it's sitting on top of the stack, not in the middle of the stack. It's sitting on top of the stack, and bring a whole stack to play. And therefore, it's your ability to integrate into the healthcare system is critical, not your ability to integrate into a local health IT environment necessarily. And so, historically, trying to do M&A around Europe on an IT basis was just a nightmare. I mean, I remember working at BCG. We worked for Oracle 20 odd years ago, and we did a massive pan-European case. Could they go pan-European with their middleware? Just wasn't going to happen. But now you've got companies with their own operational stack, and they're going in and they need to plug into a local payer system, patient system. That's where that question of buy and build is happening. And that just wasn't even a question 15, 20 years ago. So it's great to see it happening. We think quite hard about it. So far, we've actually gone the other way. And in our companies where we are going pan-European, there's only a couple. We are trying more of a build, but I think that's purely because we couldn't actually find the M&A targets to go and do it, because there may be, I don't know, maybe they're sort of, just different sectors have different maturity. And this is one of the things about M&A, is it follows a sort of maturity cycle. At the beginning of a cycle, there won't be targets to go and do an M&A. I think in more primary care areas, that a little bit more mature, so you've got some targets. But so my question to Ranjan was going to be, if you didn't find the targets, would you have built in those markets? Would you have built in a similar way to the way the targets had built? Or would you have just not gone into those markets at all and chosen different markets?
Great question. Look, slightly hypothetical, because we knew there are targets, and in the sector that we are in, we started in primary care. But we would have is the short answer, because we, any platform business needs to scale, and then so do we. And we would have gone in organically and built it. And in some countries where that is the case, there are no targets, right? No right targets or targets at the right price. And there we are going to build organically. Yeah. So there are ways to do it. But look, two things there. One, faced with this once in a lifetime opportunity that COVID, otherwise a horrid thing, but for the sector, it's been a great catalyst, right? This once in a lifetime opportunity that was presented, I think we always had a strategic M&A in the plan, but we just accelerated it, and we acquired 6 companies in a period of 9 to 10 months to just build, bring it all together, and then build the platform. Okay. And I think for us, what I really go to lengths to emphasize is one of the things I'd like to believe we are showcasing is that there is not just one way to build a business, right? Because conventionally, when you think of startups, you just think of organic growth, organic scaling and stuff, right? And I genuinely feel that for a platform business in healthcare, M&A has to be in the core plan, and that's what this is another way, capital efficient. Where do you deploy your capital and resources to build scale? You can do it organically, or you can do smart M&A, right? And that's why I'd like to think we're trailblazing in that right from the inception as a startup, having built this into our plans and infrastructure, right? So that's how we've gone. So it's a business model innovation as well as what you referred to as bringing in the platform and plugging in the local side of it. So there is a tech part of it, but there's mostly a business model part of it.
So it sounds like you're choosing the markets you want to enter, and then you're saying, well, if you can go M&A, then that's a short circuit to it. Therefore, why not? But if you can't, it's still the right market to go for. Then let's build. But maybe it's just not quite such a priority as where you've got an immediate M&A target.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's helpful.
So are you guys seeing this across HealthTech then? Is there much more M&A to be expected in the future? Are we going to consolidate? Are we going to see a few big players rather than lots of little ones? Is that the future of HealthTech? Should the ambition of a few seed and Series A companies now to be acquired, is M&A going to be common in HealthTech moving forward?
May I share my point of view on this one? Listen, I think HealthTech is super diverse, we said. So there are elements of the HealthTech system, of the health system, that are scalable. And so I expect there to see companies consolidating, at least on a national level, and maybe on an international level if initiatives like Health Hero succeed. But still, if you ask me, I still believe the platform logic is a challenging one. It's a very good thing to be able to build. If it was possible, it would create massive value, but it's very challenging because I'm not even speaking of the tech stack, also because of the cultural way healthcare is managed in different countries, the way people relate to it. And so it's also a shift to have patients change their habit and enter into a more processed and standardized way of managing them. But then if you look at HealthTech more broadly, even though it's probably as wide as internet, I believe that there will be many places for standalone point solutions, competition, and limited consolidations. And also there are tons of segments that are big enough for 1-2 players, but not big enough for a massive. And I'm saying big in terms of market, but I'm also saying big in terms of a magnitude of IP that you can develop in it. So I think it's really a mixed industry where you will see for the probably patient management and access to care and probably also chronic disease management, some platforms being progressively built, but that will depend on point solutions where you are likely to see more local and less concentrated players. That would be my guess, honestly. And I think there is it creates a broad spectrum of opportunities for entrepreneurs, potentially also for investors, because some of them are probably tinier but more secure than others.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And just adding to, I think, another driver for seeing more activity, so acquisition activity and consolidation is going to be the capital. The thing that's changed in the last couple of years is an enormous wave of capital where you have huge amounts of capital with huge ambition looking to deploy quickly, and you therefore drive an ambition for scale. Often the only way to get that scale quick enough is to buy things, whether it's point technology solutions, whether it's scale in a particular country, or just pure volume across the board. I think that's going to be a big driver. And so as long as that keeps coming, then there'll be some consolidation.
Write-off is also very good to use capital, you know.
What's that?
Write-offs.
Write-offs?
Yeah, they are very, very, very good. They can be very quick.
And there will be some of those, actually, just wanted to add one caveat. We've talked all about care so far, digital care and care provision. The digital, we look at digital pharma and think about selling software to pharma and into trials. That's much more like a regular enterprise sale, not completely. it's somewhere in between the two. But from a scaling perspective, it is easier. It's global customer base. It's very much more homogenous product. So product market fit is easier to tell. But it still does have some idiosyncrasies around regulation and validation of software and tests and so on.
Well, I would like to go a bit more practical now into some of those examples. When you guys think of your portfolios, who's scaling well and why? What barriers are there that your portfolio companies have overcome particularly well, or indeed gone around when you think of your portfolio company specifically?
You mean scale in general, not mechanically?
In general, yeah. I mean, there are obviously plenty of barriers to scale. There's regulation, as Andrew said, there's plenty of others, loads of adoption challenges. I mean, the companies that scale well, what do they do differently?
Well, I think most of our companies, when they're at the moment of scale, so far have been scaling quite well. With always challenges and difficulties at some points of their growth trajectory. But most of them on the health space, at Kamet, we have 10 growing quite well. Now, the challenge for me, the point is, I'm not sure what they do different from one another. What they have done well in the first phase is adapt very, very well to their market conditions, understand very well, what drives the sales of their product, adapt their product to the specifics of the different users, buyers, etc., so that they are in a situation to scale. And what I can see is there are some challenges because, when they believe they need to upgrade the product because they will address a wider market, every time they do that, it slows their growth quite a lot, because suddenly their previous customer like it a little bit less. And so the fine-tuning of product market fit in this environment of health, for me, is quite subtle. So yeah.
I completely agree. That is the hardest thing, I think, in healthcare, is going from product customer fit, which quite a lot of companies get quite early, and you design a product for 1 or 2 customers and it all looks great, and then you go out and you try and sell to the next 10, 20 customers and you realize that actually they want something slightly different. So the ones that we find, that when they hit that point of inflection, whether it's digital care or digital pharma, it's when they've got a broad enough product suite to serve that customer need, but not so broad that you're selling a million different things. So there's getting that balance. So having a breadth of product that you can sell repeatedly over and over to lots of customers, then those lots of customers, that's your market. Not your first 2 or 10 customers. It's the 100 customers who all want the same product that you're offering. It may be a broad product, may have several products within that product offering, but getting that product built and understanding that customer demand is the toughest thing, and timing is everything. And so we've invested in companies where we're still invested 7, 8, 9 years later, and they're still trying to get that product market fit, or the market's catching up with their product and their product was ahead of market or whatever it was, and they're absolutely taking off now because suddenly things have changed in the market and suddenly the product is fitting. But so
do you want concrete examples? That's
yes,
what you
please.
wanted. Okay, so I'll give you a couple of concrete examples. We have a company on the fertility space called Apricity. Okay, that their business model is to create a virtual clinic to provide fertility services to patients and to make the fertility much more patient-centric, deconstructing a little bit the, I would say, clinic model where people have to go there for tests, results, drug prescription, and surgery. Okay, and the whole follow-up and offering to couple to deconstruct this journey, work with the therapist that they want, work with the hospital that they want, with the provider that they want in terms of tests, while keeping together I would say the fertility process. So it's a relatively simple to understand offer. Now, when you look at that, who are the clients? Okay, the clients are the patients. It's an out-of-pocket. The clients are the company or the insurers that want to reimburse it. The clients are the clinic with whom you need to work because you're not doing active surgery within this digital platform. Okay, the clients are the doctors. The clients are the labs. The clients, it's a very broad set of clients. So they are doing egg donation. So the clients are also the donors. Okay, so when you look at it overall, you see that the number of clients is very, very large. For 1 year, 2 years, the company was just trying to understand how to position itself vis-a-vis each of those and how to adapt the detail, not the broad offer, the detail of the offer, the operating model with every one of those different players in the ecosystem that all are clients. Now, if you look at, and so until I would say mid into COVID, they were in this phase. And it's a company, so it took 3 years and something. Since they had cracked that, the growth of the business is coming at pace, month after month, achieving a nice ARR. So you see also, when you go to raise money for something like that, something super difficult because people like my friend here, but they want something that's simple, you know, a SaaS model is super easy to understand. You sell it for 100, you have 72 margin, you have acquisition cost, you have a LTV, and so if you make the math, it's a simple curve, you will become very profitable. A model like Apricity, you know, it's a combination of a SaaS model and clinical delivery. So when you sell for 6,000 or 7,000 or 300, depending on what you sell, you have some provision of service, human cost, and technology and SaaS. And so getting those model finance is also challenging because before you can really demonstrate the growth, you have to, but is your model B2B? Is it B2C? And the reality, it cannot work on only one of those. It has to be successful, a breadth of connectivity that makes it financeable and possible to grow. So you see, it's quite tricky. Huh?
And we need more investors who understand that combination.
Tell me about it.
Ranjit, we've got a few minutes left. Where do you sit on something Andrew mentioned about customizing for every customer, one cookie cutter approach? I mean, how do you approach that problem?
Wow. We don't. Okay. No, let me take it back.
It's one thing for everybody. That's
it.
Let
me take it back. Let me take it back. Not for individual customer as in an individual, but certainly, look, I mean, for big strategic clients, our entire offering is that we're not a one-size-fits-all kind of offering, and we've modeled our offering so that it could be bespoke. So when we work with large strategic clients like big insurance, we're really able to customize what we deliver, right? Now, if we go down that spectrum to, let's say, our corporate offering, right? It is more a standard package of a corporate offering, which is a well-being app with a clinical services core, right? That we do not customize because this goes more on the spectrum of the kind of SaaS offering that Andrew was referring to, where you can, pretty much across companies and across markets, employ health and well-being is largely similar with certain nuances, and you deliver that as one. On the other side of the spectrum, when you're doing, let's say, selective agreements in Germany with different insurance companies, and they might go down the route of certain disease areas or certain, geographies and stuff, which is completely customized to that particular insurance company in that region, and that's what you've got to deliver, right? And things which other insurance companies and NHS, for example, comes this side of the spectrum, but not as hugely customized to that. Something which Michael mentioned, which resonates, right? The conventional thinking is, a business in the early stage has to keep things simple and do one thing and do one thing well. You know what? In the space that we operate in, that's just not a choice. So when I'm explaining my business to certain people, they say, oh, man, it's like you're playing 5-dimensional chess, right? Because, it's different markets, it's different stakeholders within those markets, it's different B2B, B2C, B2G, and then there is no one B2B. There is, within B2B, there are different criteria. Ultimately, the companies who will become and who are becoming successful have developed this into a fine art, and it's intuitive, and they're not following some theoretical construct that you have to do just one market, one segment, one channel, and just you have to scale. You have to be far more agile and intuitive than that to scale in the sector that we are. So there are no simple answers, unfortunately.
Awesome.
It comes back to, if your ambition was to build the fastest scaling, biggest company you could possibly build, you would not choose healthcare. So why is everyone in health? We're all in healthcare for usually for different reasons. And if you have chosen healthcare because you want to build the biggest company and scale it as fast as possible, you've made the wrong decision. So most people are here because they want to have, create great companies, but which have a great purpose or set of outcomes. So that's another, I think, big thing which is different about our sector, which is often overlooked. And as a result, I have to go up again in investment committees against, not against, but I compete for funds against my B2B SaaS colleagues who are, in fintech and stuff and scaling, off the charts. And I come along with my sort of slightly sanitized healthcare, slightly complex go-to-market strategy and, long, complicated service tech. And everyone's like, oh, it's going to be a long old haul, isn't it? And they look at the sort of record in the past and go, yeah, everything takes twice as long. Why are we doing that? Well, if you ultimately want to be investing in good companies which have a big impact in the world, then healthcare has got to be a part of it. So there is a bit of a trade-off, but you can still make great returns. So that's why people are.
Exactly.
Michael, this is the final word. If you want to.
No, but exactly. Let's not be too discouraged. Huh? There are good returns also in healthcare. It's also a matter of how do you deal with it. I think you need probably to depend a bit more on the ecosystem. You probably need to get your fact a little bit straight sooner and earlier. You need, in the early phase, to spend quite, to be quite lean on the way you use your money, so that you really focus on getting the few hurdles right, so that you really have something to do. But once it is done, there are still some very nice scaling model. We have a few companies in our portfolio that are progressing very, very well, raising funds, growing, etc., etc. And I just want to add one thing. I think Rajan is too modest. They have built in Health Hero the most versatile tech platform for frontline healthcare delivery that is on the market. That's why they're able to scale. Maybe they are smart in acquisition, but it's very clear that the attention that is paid in Health Hero to quality healthcare, the flexibility of the platform, of the offer of service, is making a huge difference versus competition. So I heard you saying no. I won't say no. I mean, what has been designed there is honestly very impressive, and I know it quite well because we spend a lot of time together exchanging notes and models, and I must say it's a super impressive achievement. So.
Let's just stop on that note.
I think so, guys. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you in the audience or anybody online wants to hear more from these guys, each of them has been on an episode of the HealthTech podcast. So by all means, find that wherever you get podcasts. Thank you, guys. A round of applause for the panel.